very difficult for any of us to imagine the quiet desperation which the individuals and the family members who are beside me and behind me are going through when you have a missing person, a loved one, or one that is deceased and looking for the perpetrator of a potential homicide. I don't think any of us can imagine what that must feel like. The closest thing I ever came to it, and I don't ever want to come any closer, is when I had my little niece in one of the grocery stores, and I was in charge of watching her, and she disappeared. And I could tell you, the heat came over me, and I was running around that grocery store, and I finally found her. But I'm sure that might have happened to you at some point in your life with a loved one, with a child, or with a family member. But you can imagine compounding that maybe 50 seconds when I was looking for my niece, make that 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months, 5 years, a lifetime. It's something that's certainly very difficult to deal with. So it's always difficult to talk about the subject, but it's something that has to be talked about and dealt with. And today we're announcing another part of another, what I would call a tool to try to get some significant feedback or information. And it only takes probably one little notice, one little situation, one little remembrance or reminder from some of these coasters that can help jog somebody's memory and maybe make the difference in the lives of that person and their family members. And that's what the hope is of this particular program and the second round of it. It's Coasters for Hope, Coasters for helping to find missing family members, or in this case we have some who are deceased, but we're looking for the perpetrator of that dastardly particular crime. And I always like to thank Doug and Mary Lyall, because they're kind of the parents and the leaders in New York State, really, I think to a great extent across this nation, in terms of helping family members and turning their personal tragedy, and I appreciate all the family members here, because they're turning their personal tragedy not only into something positive by supporting this program for their family and their lost loved ones, but for the other family members across the state. And Doug and Mary Lyall, if I started to go into the ways they've done that, we'd be here all day. But this is just one of the programs they've brought forth to me. And people like the tavern and restaurant owners, DeCrescente, Ross Piscatelli is here. He's going to say a few words on their behalf. Phil Barrett, the supervisor, Amy Standard, who's a councilwoman who support these programs, our law enforcement officials. Can't say enough about Sheriff Zerlo and his support for programs like these and so many other programs. So at this point, I'd like to have Supervisor Phil Barrett just say a few words and welcome everybody to Clifton Park, who is out in front on this program, and he certainly supports not only this business, but all the businesses in Clifton Park, and many of the tavern and restaurants in Clifton Park are in support of this program. We started out with the first round. I think it was 7 individuals, Ross, and now this is going to be 8. Started with 5,000 coasters. We had to go back, and Ross had to print, and by the way, they took care of the cost of all that printing. We had the press conference, first one, about a year and a half at DeCrescente a year and a half ago. They took care of the cost. That we had to print they had to print 25,000 more, and then 25,000 more. So we went up to 50,000, and I believe we're starting out with 25,000 today with this new program. So I'd like to have Supervisor Barrett come up and just say a few words, if he could.
Thank you, Assemblyman. I want to thank Assemblyman Jim Tedisco for once again bringing this very important item to everybody's attention and bringing attention to this very heart-wrenching situation that folks find themselves in, not only here in the capital region, but across the nation. So thank you, Assemblyman, for all your great work in Clifton Park, as always. I think this is another great example of the private sector stepping up to help the community, public-private partnership with Assemblyman Tedisco's office. And I just want to say, no words can ever express, you know, what you've gone through and continue to go through. But I hope that the support that is shown in our community and many across New York State provides some comfort to you. And I, again, just want to thank everybody for being a part of this. Thank you, Jim.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you. And from law enforcement, and this is a partnership. You need law enforcement. They have to take the tips, and And, you know, the good thing about this is people can do it anonymously. You know, a lot of times people just say sometimes they just don't want to get involved. As you see, it's anonymous. The information's on there. They call a phone number, but they can also contact their local law enforcement and the sheriff's office and things of that nature if they think they have seen something. So I'd like to have the sheriff come up and say a few words. He's a huge supporter of Doug and Mary and all the families who have lost ones, and has always been there to support and help out in every single way. So, Sheriff Zerlo, come on up.
Thank you. On behalf of myself and our law enforcement partners throughout the area, I want to thank Assemblyman Tedisco, Doug and Mary Lyall, Center for Hope, and DeCrescente Distributing. Coasters for Hope, it's a huge investigative tool for us. These coasters will be out in all area restaurants, and we're asking if anybody has any information, maybe it'll jog somebody's memory as to a lot of these open cases. We encourage them to call law enforcement. Like the Assemblyman said, it's anonymous. I have a website set up through the Sheriff's Office where we have a hotline they can call. Everything's kept anonymous. Any type of lead, whether people think it's minor, we will take it, we will investigate it. But it's a great investigative tool for, I know, for my department and for local law enforcement. So if anybody has any information on any of these open cases, please contact local law enforcement or give our office a call. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff, for all you do. Now I'd like to have those parents who kind of look over us from across the state. My constituents, Doug and Mary Lyall, who are doing so much. You know, their daughter's been missing for how many years now? 17 years now. But this is Coasters for Hope. So until we find someone, we always have to have hope. And we will keep searching, and they continue to keep searching, and they keep continuing to be innovative, developing programs. And I'll tell you, no moss grows under these guys' feet. They are just great human beings, and I'm proud to be able to represent them. So come on up, Doug and Mary.
I'm just really humbled to have all these people say all these good things about us. We're just two parents who lost our daughter 17 years ago, and we're hoping that our coasters, our programs, will help other families besides our family. All these people are children of somebody. They all have families, and these families are desperately searching for them. The coasters with the different people, Erica Franelik, Audrey Mae Herron, Amanda King, Christina White, Robert Sanfelice, and I think Kathleen Kolajic. I think that's how you say that. They all need answers. And I hope that there's somebody out there that is having a drink some night, looking at this coaster and saying, you know, I know what happened to that person. So we can give answers to the families so they won't have to suffer anymore. We have actually just past weekend, we were at the Ride for Missing Children, some couple of hundred, families there. They're also searching. Everybody is searching for an answer. Thank you so much for all your help. Thank you, DeCrescente. Thank you, Jim. We're just so grateful for all the people that have helped us get to the place we are today. Thank you so much.
And we certainly thank you and the family members who are here, because you are the innovators. Besides this, I just mentioned one of the program, and that's the playing cards. Some of you may not know this, but they developed playing cards with the pictures of missing persons and put them in the prisons and places where people might have seen and might be in there with some individuals who really perpetrated some of these crimes. And so they've done so many innovative things and been so supportive of parents, and parents have been supportive of them, and that really helps. I talked about good corporate citizens and good community citizens. There's none better than DeCrescente distributors. I mean, they just came through big time. We went over them, and they didn't even hesitate. No, this is something we want to be involved with. And 50,000 last time, they're printing up 25,000. I'm sure if there's a need, because last time you got a call, geez, we need more, and it just kept, and that's why we're so proud of the rest of our community business citizenry too, because they really, tavern restaurants really bought into this. And remember, it's not only individuals sitting at a bar and having, you're going to come to a nice restaurant like this and sit down with your sons and your daughters and your wife, and they're going to be drinking water or soda, and they're going to be looking at, anybody could have seen anything at any time, which would lead to just that one tip, which would escalate, and it might be the answer to the puzzle. So as many tools as possible we need. And this is, I think, an important. So I'd like to have their general counsel for DeCrescente, Ross Piscitelli, come up. And thank you so much and for what DeCrescente has been doing.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming, first of all. And thanks to Wayne Beal and Ravenswood, Assemblyman Tedisco, Phil Barrett, Sheriff Zerlo, and of course the Lyalls. On behalf of CJ DeCrescente and DeCrescente Distributing Company, we're more than happy to lend our resources to this effort. We feel it's so important that this word gets out, and with the help of the Lyalls and their tireless work on this project and on this issue, as the Assemblyman said, they are the leaders in this area, and their energy and inspiration is really something to behold. So we cover 11 counties. We cover a lot of bars and restaurants. As the Assemblyman said, the first round of coasters that we did in December 2013, we had a press conference. We printed 5,000. We were, I think, probably a little bit conservative on that, and by the end of the press conference, we had so many calls, we were overwhelmed. There was no way we could keep up with demand. We immediately printed another 25,000, which lasted about, 3 or 4 months maybe, and then another 25,000 on top of that. So it was over 50,000 coasters that we produced in support of this effort. And we all know, hey, it's sometimes a needle in a haystack, but it just takes one person sitting at a bar, one person at a restaurant to say, hey, maybe I know something about this. Maybe I saw something that I should report. So, again, happy to be here. Thanks everyone for coming out, and we look forward to another successful Coasters for Hope program.
Thank you, Ross. Just two more things, and this I neglected to tell Doug and Mary about 2 weeks ago. I know they wanted to start it out here in the capital region, and then you'd like to see this go right across the state of New York.
Yes.
Well, the good news for you, Doug and Mary, and I didn't tell you this, and I forgot the fellow's name, but I'll catch up with him. One of my assembly colleagues comes over to my seat, and he says, he's got your coaster here, and he goes, I live in Queens, downstate. He goes, I want to do this program downstate in Queens. How do I? And I outlined for him, well, we went to DeCrescente, a distributor, we asked for support. Then it goes to the tavern rate. Okay, and he took all the information down. So I think there's interest now going across the state. They've seen it and here in the capital region. And so that's good news because, there can be an abduction here and somebody could be in Syracuse or Buffalo or New York City or Rochester. You can be in another country sometimes when these things happen if there's an abduction or something. So there is interest with my colleagues over there, and they see the work you've done. And one other thing that Doug and Mary wanted me to say. These camera people, the media, have been so kind to them. They want to thank you, and the family members want to thank you. We as politicians want to yell at you sometimes on days and thank you on other days, but they want to thank you every day because you've been so kind to them in covering these issues, and you seem to understand it very well, and there's a lot of compassion for not only them but the other family members, and we want to thank you for the great job you do in getting these programs out there, the way you've got some of the missing people out there and keep exposing, and that's what we need. When there's an abduction or a missing person, it seems to get a lot of attention for a while, and then it dies down. And that's very difficult for the family members when it quiets down and there's no exposure to their missing person. So you keep covering the programs, you keep interacting with the family members, and they want to thank you for being here today, but for always being there for the family of New York.